Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Danya Williams. I'm so excited today, guys. This is an awesome show.
As always, thank you guys for sharing part of your Sunday with us. And on top of all the excitement, it is just days away from the 1950 United States Census.
Yes, it is. I forgot. Whoopee.
Just a couple of days.
That thing is going to drive me crazy. Y'all already know.
Well, you've been working very hard cleaning up your tree in preparation for the new census that's going to be out there. So yes,
Yeah.
all that hard work will have paid off. But listen, we've got an absolutely cracking show today. This is one of Donnia's favorite heroines of possibly of all times. She's like you're a spirit totem. You just
Yes,
love
she is.
you just love Cathay Williams.
I
And we
love her.
have such an amazing guest to join us today. Her name is Kenya Finley Jean, who started her career at Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as a park guide. And then she is now a supervisory park ranger at the Civil War Defenses of Washington, an independent program of the National Park Services. It's her responsibility to develop interpretive programs in the Washington, D.C. area and coexists with the three parks in the area that have Civil War forts on them. They're called Rock Creek Park, National Capital Park East, and the George Washington Memorial Parkway. Welcome to the show, Kenya. So pleased to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you very much, folks. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, yes. I'm excited. This is a
And
show.
while we were in the virtual green room, Donnie and I were telling you that we're just really impressed with the work that the National Park Service does. We have certainly learned far more about it through the two guests that we've had, and just the work that you guys do is just incredible.
Yes, well, thank you very much. Like I would like to say, to work for the Park Service, I learned so much even before I even went in. I learned so much about the different sites that I have worked throughout my career with the Park Service, and definitely, I always say if anyone is would love to work. Quote for the federal government and with the National Park Service, I would definitely say look at USA Jobs. That's where that's where all the federal jobs are located, and with that, you can actually start saying, well, maybe I want to do a park, especially in your area. I always say start with that and then just expand.
Excellent. And what was it about, before we actually get into the Cathay Williams story,
Mhm.
what was it about her history and her story that really drew you in?
Well, with Cathay Williams, I always like to tell folks it actually starts after the Civil War, which is what I'm actually my site works with right now. But with that, you see her come in with the Civil War, working in the Civil War. She was actually considered to be a contraband. Therefore, they used her services that she actually had acquired because she was an enslaved person. And with that, it, I want to say, probably gave her that enlightenment that, hey, I can go further than where I started from. I'm an enslaved person. I became free, and now what can I do? And of course, at that time, opportunities for women was limited, especially for African American women. So when you see that what she decided to do was she said, I want to see more, I want to do more, and therefore she put that into becoming a soldier at a time where women soldiers were not even thought of at the time, because just as she was used as a contraband, they were just putting in for colored troops to actually go into the service to fight in the Civil War. So I
So
think
I
with her, yeah, go ahead.
was going to say, so she was born in Missouri. At around what age did she sign up for the United States Colored Troops?
Well, she was in her 20s when she actually signed up. So
Mhm.
she was born in Independence, Missouri, and actually her father was a free man. Her mother was enslaved, And I don't know if your audience know, but it always went by your mother. What was your mother's status? So therefore, with her mother being enslaved, and the union that she had with her father, any children that's coming out of that would be enslaved as well. So that's actually how she became enslaved in Jackson City, Jefferson City, Missouri, on a plantation. Now, the contraband enlistment was around 17 years old is when and she was actually a army cook and washwoman, and she was under the service of General Philip Sheridan. And with that, she saw the Red River Campaign and Battle of Pea Ridge. So that was her service that she saw before she was even enlisted. When she decided to enlist in the military, with that. Now, asking the question of when did she, or about what age, I would say she was roughly in her 20s when she
Okay.
decided to do that.
So I'm kind of thinking about the way society was, I kind of want to say back then in the 1800s, but it's still kind of with us in the 1970s. But thinking of her as a 17, 18-year-old young woman, there must have been a lot of pressure for her to settle down, get married, and have kids. And I'm wondering how hard that was for her to buck against that and to actually enlist.
Well, I would say, now you must also remember, she's just got her freedom from being enslavement. So the get married, settle down, I don't really think that was actually going on, because now you
Yeah.
have this whole population that for several generations back was enslaved. So now you're like, either you're trying to find, relatives who were sold off, or who may have ran off, and you're trying to connect back. Now, what they did say, that what they believe may have happened, is that she had relatives who had already enlisted in the military, and therefore, in an interview that she had given in her later years, she said that she had a special friend and a cousin that she enlisted with. And therefore, I mean, you could take a guess that they probably helped her cover that she was a female um, when she decided to enlist. And then seeing that, what was the majority of the population doing after the war? They were going west, because you have lands, you have gold, and yes, you do have the war that's going on with the Native Americans situation as well. So I think with her, that gave her her freedom to figure out exactly, what am I going to do with my life. And I think that's why she actually did that, because she already had done, quote unquote, you want to say, the housewife kind of situation, cooking, cleaning. I mean, she was considered to be a house servant when she was enslaved. So therefore, this was like, well, wait a minute, I can see the world as far as I can go with it. And I think that's probably why she decided to enlist. And of course, when she did decide to enlist, she had to conceal that she's a woman, and therefore changing her name to William Cathy. And that was her name while she was under the military.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was finding a lot of things saying that her name was William Cathay, just that she switched the name, but
Mhm.
that was an E, not an A. I'm
Right.
not tripping. Okay.
No, no. So
'Cause
yeah, so she definitely did switch it out. Yeah. So she actually
okay.
flipped her name. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
And again, what I'm finding really fascinating about her story is we hear, for those of us who research this, or,
Mhm.
specifically research our ancestry, we have a feeling of enslaved, men coming out of enslavement and
Mhm.
like going on to pioneer things and, becoming, whether they're farmers or sharecroppers or,
Mhm.
lawyers, doctors, all the rest of it. The history always seems to be on the male trailblazers.
Mhm.
And in her, well, I'm not going to say in her way, she was just flat out a trailblazer. We so rarely hear about the women. who
Right,
came
right.
out
And
of slavery who were trailblazers.
right. And I mean, of course, like I said, I mean, we all know of Harriet Tubman. They're
Mm.
just getting to the point of talking about the others, like I.B. Wells and those of that. But what I always like to tell folks is that, yes, I mean, there are probably a slew of African American women that were trailblazers that, went out and did things that the society at the time would have said, "Oh no, you can't do that." We're just getting to the tip of the iceberg about black suffragettes. I mean, you hear about the others, but what about them? We know they were out there, so it's not just it's more. And finally, our story is coming out. And like I'd like to tell folks, you're just it was something that you didn't know. You may not have was taught it in school, um, but now with the way society is, the way we have like social media and these kind of sort of things, that someone say, "Hey, this is what I found out. Let me tell everybody else," and then put that seed in their mind so that they can go out there and say, "Let me figure more out. Let me go do my own research about this matter, this subject matter."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
I'm going
definitely,
to,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying definitely that is what that's actually what got me into park service, because it's like, well, what else? What else is out there? Um, and therefore, that's how I got into it.
I'm going to front load a question that I'm sure is on many of our audience's mind.
Hmm.
So again, this is a woman who disguised herself as a man,
Hmm. Hmm.
swapped her name around to be able to do that, to serve. Did anyone in her unit, was anyone actually aware that she was actually a woman?
From my research, that I found that no one actually considered anything. They just took her for what well, he was when she signed up. Um, and actually, if I remember here, they actually describe her. Um, because of course she had to get a medical exam, but at that time they weren't really looking at like, oh, you can walk, talk, you got teeth, okay, we're pretty good in. But her papers actually said, this is a soldier that has black eyes, black hair, black complexion, and is 5'9" height. That's all she needed for
Mm.
her paperwork. um, and the examination never went to say, oh wow, she's a female as well. No, that was it.
Because I never really thought about it until I came across the story of Cathay. So with that, this is a Sunday, it's a family-friendly show, so I'm not going
Hmm.
to be graphic, but the men
Hmm.
out there will know what I mean. Normally, when we have any kind of a military exam, we get what's called the cough test, and I
Hmm.
guess they weren't doing that in the Civil War.
They weren't. That wasn't even what they were thinking about at the time. You got to remember, this is right after the Civil War.
Right.
The United States is going westward, so they're doing the expansion. The Native Americans is not. I hate to say going for this expansion, so they're fighting. And I will always say they needed people. They needed men, quote unquote. They needed men, and therefore, hey, what they say, if you could chew and talk and walk, that's good
Mm.
good for us. And believe it or not, if because she contracted smallpox right after she enlisted, and then she had to go and meet up with her unit, but she was getting sick a lot, and that's actually what that's how they found out her secret. She had to be hospitalized, and that's when they found out. And like I like to tell folks, is like she didn't get a dishonorable discharge. From what they say, she was an excellent soldier. She was a private, and therefore, what they did was they gave her an honorable discharge from the service. And that wasn't the end of her adventure. She actually just kept going.
Sorry,
Wow.
Darn, did you have a question?
I was just in the middle of posting to everywhere because I want everybody to know about this.
Hmm.
But well, okay. So my thing is this: I'm a huge, huge, huge Disney fan, and can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a huge Disney fan,
Hmm.
and when I first found this story, I immediately thought of Mulan.
Hmm.
And in doing the research on this story, I also started to find that there were other women that did this exact same thing.
Hmm.
Now, whether their stories are documented is the question.
Right,
So
right,
is there some way, because I know that there was a white woman who did it in during the American Revolution.
right,
But
right.
I mean, like, how do we have like a number of how many women actually did something like this?
So they estimate that it probably was about maybe 5,000 that had
What?
assumed male, like they assume a male identity while going through this. Now, I mean, because you just take it for, not just the army, but you had the navy as well, uh, that were actually concealed their identity and became soldiers. I mean, you have, especially in the Civil War. I mean, you have a dozen or so that. I mean, you had them in all different types. You had a woman, I believe she was Cuban, Cuban descent. She worked for the Confederate side. You had several um, in the Union side, but you actually had, let's see, there were actually two more African American women who had concealed their identity and took the identity of a man and actually fought. They actually fought in the Civil War, so they were a little bit older than Kathy, but they did it as well. Um,
Really?
yes, yes, they did, and they lived their lives. They now, if I can remember, one of them never got her pension, but she did not really get found out until after she left the military. Yeah.
Well, who was that?
Now, it would take me some time to do it. I do have her on another slide, but I can definitely get that back and actually let you know who it is because I actually have a little bit of information on her. So yeah.
That is, I knew you were gonna start dropping bombs on this show.
Yeah.
So, because see, now you dropped another bomb earlier, in our virtual green room.
Oh,
Hmm.
But
can I just
this
jump
whole
in?
5,000 woman thing, I didn't even know that. I was like, what?
Yeah. Now I will say I might have to check it, but I believe that's what I read. But I think that was about right. That probably um, took the identity of men and went into the
Mm,
service or spying as well. So either or.
that's
So,
amazing.
what were some of the things, the jobs or occupations that Cathay actually had in the USCT?
Okay, well she was a soldier, so her job would be probably. I mean, when she was actually enlisted as a soldier, it would be soldier work. So patrolling. They were in a fort, Fort Union, is where she went to after she got discharged. But she was in if I see here. Okay, so I mean she was in Kansas and she was in New Mexico. That's where she was actually stationed. In Cummings and Bayard in New Mexico, Fort Union. So guard duty, uh, patrolling. I mean, this is considered to be the part of the Native Americans or quote unquote Indian wars.
Hmm.
So you had these things going on. Fort Riley, in Kansas, where her regiment was at some point. So this is the jumping point of actually going further out west to these territories. So just like soldiers. Now, I would tell folks that if they did have downtime, it would be spending probably at the fort, hanging out with your other soldiers.
Mm.
So, for the time period, again, I'm just getting it through my head.
Hmm.
Single woman
Hmm.
in the military
Yeah.
who's black, and she saw a good. It sounds like she saw a goodly part of the kind of, at least the new territory that was being added to the country.
Right. 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 So
So
she did.
again,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so again, having that freedom of movement, I don't even know how usual that was for that time period.
Well, at that time period, like you said, it's like, and then once I always like to say, once after the Civil War, people are moving. People are trying to find distant relatives that may have been sold off if they were enslaved. A lot of communities of all African American towns and settlements are coming up, are popping up because it's like, okay, you hear that you can get land out west, in these newly formed states, in these territories. So, unfortunately, we have this notion that and that oh, they all just stayed where they were at. They didn't. One thing that I have noticed, that I noticed in my own research, that a lot of times what we perceive as cowboys, like from the TV shows and the movies, majority of them were African American. We had African American families out in the frontier. I mean, we don't see shows about that, but that's actually what was happening. So, of course, we would say, oh, what? They actually went out? Yes, they went out west. They did golding for golding, mining for gold, excuse me. They went out exploring areas. I mean, you have families that went out and became what they call it, cattle rustlers and bronco busters and all that kind of situation. Um, so they were out there, out in the West. We just never seen it or never heard about it until you actually start doing some research to find out where, what was actually going out here in Oklahoma and New Mexico, Arizona, things like that.
So,
You had a
okay.
question.
Yeah, I got a question. So here's the thing. First of all, you brought up cowboys. Let me just say, we were already like, we had one show where our mouth was to the ground the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
That show, and it's just amazing when that comes out. But I wanted to like really point out something that two of our guests was saying on here. Randy Simon Saray, she was like, I don't see how they pulled it off. Just the issue of bladder emptying alone. She said maybe the other soldiers kept the secret, and that's what you said. She had at least a cousin and a friend. But one person pointed out, and that time of month.
Right.
I didn't even think about that.
Well, no, I didn't either.
And then you also have to think about and just let your guests would be thinking, what do you think an enslaved person had to do at that time of the month? They couldn't stop working. They still had to do what they had, whatever the master had for them to do. And, there was probably, there probably was some ways that she could conceal it, keep it, concealed. And then also, you just have to bear with it. I would think, and I understand what you're saying, but, there had to be some times where she had to conceal it and keep it together and not let, you might have a couple of soldiers who know you, who hold your secret, but you don't want everybody to know, because that would just definitely bring out everything.
Well, I'm just going to jump in really quick and just say that again, just kind of feeding off of what was just said. Our ancestors were ingenious people. They knew what they had to do. If anything was going to get in their way, even within the confines of slavery, they were going to do it. And she just strikes me as a person who just said, "This is what I want to do, and I'm gonna do what I have to do to make this work for me."
Yeah, and I think that's what she did. She found an opportunity. She took that opportunity, and therefore she went and she took it, and that's what she did. And yes, and like I tell folks, they're right. You can't have your secret out there for everyone to know. But you get you get some close, allies in this and say, hey, and I definitely know for a fact she held her weight. That they had respect for her because, like I said, her commanding officer gave her an honorable discharge. They didn't say it was a your discredit. From what I gather, they thought very highly of her. So she was a very good soldier, and they were just like, unfortunately, to their mind, she was a woman. The secret was out, and she had to go.
Well, I'm kind of thinking about it this way: if she had already proven that she could do, I'm just thinking in terms of employment. You prove that you can do the job.
Mhm.
And I'm even thinking in the context of the 1800s. She proved that she could do the job, even if people found out during her service that she
Mhm.
was a woman. The fact that she was doing the same work that anyone else was doing, if the bullets were flying and she had already had your back in combat,
Mhm.
if her secret gets exposed at the end of the day, okay, maybe men may have felt some kind of way about it for a hot minute, but if someone pointed out, listen, she's doing all the heavy work that all the rest of us are doing, she knows how to shoot, she's got our back, what's the deal? There's just nothing really to argue about.
I mean, I understand
So
what you're saying, and yeah, that you know that logic should have worked, but it didn't because at that time women were not allowed to serve. I mean, that was just the fact of the deal. Um, and I hate to say it, but even when you have women now in the military, you have people who think that they should not be there. I mean, it's a cold fact. And they have watched their backs, been in bullets flying and explosions and everything, but you still have some folks' notion that women are not supposed to be in the military, even that they are now allowed to be in the military.
yeah. So okay, I want to go back to the the menstruation. And the reason why I want to go back to that is because do you think that one of the issues as to why she may not have been able where she, was able to cover it was
Mhm.
because of the fact Black women back then had problems, had a
Mhm.
lot of different problems because of trying to birth or but whether it was the what they ate,
Mhm.
it wasn't. Do you think that it was possible that she may not even had one, or for example, that what the example that Dee Turner put up that she used sponges to really kind of help that because that was a big deal.
Oh, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't know. From what they were saying, that was actually with her conditions. Um, well, you got to also remember, being an enslaved person, your diet is not the best. Of what I mean, you might get the scraps from the tape, from what the um, master may be having, or something of the sort. And then you got to also think, the condition was just hard back then. And for one example that they actually said in my research was that they just marched everywhere. If you did
Right.
not have horses and whatnot, and then the cholera, the smallpox, you had all these conditions come out. Now they never said what caused her to be hospitalized, um, but they said that is actually how they discovered that she was a woman when she was in the hospital.
Right. Okay.
With the menstruation, I don't know. There's no really details on that, but um, I know what your folks are saying that with a heart, with the menstruation and the heart life, could that just have been what caused them to find out that she was a woman? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that soldiers weren't eating, the best possible. They were eating, they were being
Mm.
fed, but they too probably weren't getting the best food.
I mean, they had their rations, and I guess if you
Mhm.
were, in the fort, you might eat a little bit better than when you actually going out and patrolling and so forth, with the ration and so forth that they would give them. But yeah.
That's that's amazing. That I mean, this whole thing is just utterly it blows my mind. So another person, well, I guess we kind of answered that question already, so I won't go through that.
Mhm.
Another thing though, as far as she's concerned, some of the research that I've done pointed out there was one who said she was in battle. There was another that said she wasn't in battle. Can we tell whether or not she was or wasn't? Because one researcher said, "Oh yeah, she knew how to shoot a gun because her cousins taught her how to do it." Like,
Mhm.
what's the documents? What do the documents actually
Now, I will say that when she was, 17 years old and was freed by the Union Army, and was traveling, excuse me, as a cook and a washwoman, under General Philip Sheridan, um, she saw battles. She saw the Red River campaign and also the Battle of Pea Ridge. So those battles she saw. I mean, she's right there with the general, so she's right in the heat of the battle that they're dealing with. After she leaves and decides to enlist and change her name, they really didn't say too much of battles. Now, with that, I would say she is in these areas where, quote unquote, they call the Native Americans hostiles, right? As a soldier at that time, as a Buffalo soldier, I would say she saw some battles, some fighting. Now, was it heated battles? I don't know. Where she was stationed, they did have some skirmishes, as they like to call it, where they were fighting. And as a soldier, she would definitely have to know how to shoot a gun. I mean, that's just a fact, so she would definitely have to know how to fight. I mean, if she's on guard duty and they see something, you got to fight, you got to shoot if someone doesn't identify themselves. So I would say, being a soldier, she might not have been in a huge battle, but she did see some action in the Western frontier because that's where she was at. And that's where, after the war, that's where majority of the fighting is going on, is out there in the Western frontier.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I
Okay.
will say that her unit, which was the 38th, um, was one of the 6 African American regiments. And with the regiment was 4 infantry and 2 cavalry, that was out there in the defense of the Western expansion.
Okay.
So roughly speaking, how long was her term of service?
Well, she actually signed for 3 years. Was what she enlisted for. She only actually did 2, I believe, with that, before they actually found out that she was a woman with
Mhm.
that enlistment.
And from what I understand, her body took quite the beating.
Yes, yes, it did. As she was getting older, she developed diabetes. She had a condition of nerves where the nerves would be sensitive and burning. She had her toes taken off, probably because of the diabetes, where she was walking with a crutch. Um, so yeah, that's actually why she actually put in for the military disability, because of that. Uh, I mean, I truly would say her life starting out was probably, I can't imagine of being an enslaved person. I mean, they didn't care about your health. So, yes, that all could take a
Mhm.
very harsh on your body as you were getting older.
Because reading her pension records, the ones that Donnie and I accessed,
Hmm.
there was a term that I had to look up because I had never heard of it ever, and that was the term frosted feet, which was basically chilblains.
Say that again.
It, the phrase was frosted feet,
Hmm.
which are basically like chilblains,
Oh.
um, which was kind of horrible to read.
Hmm.
There were other health conditions that were mentioned,
Hmm.
but this is leading up to what we were chatting about in the green room. Let the audience know about the success of her pension
Okay.
application.
So because she was, they had to amputate her toes, and she was having other medical conditions with being diabetic. She actually put in for 3 times um, her medical disability pension, and each time she was denied. And as we discussed, it wasn't that they didn't know she was in the military. No one even considered that. It was just because she had to prove to them that these conditions came upon because of what she has. And unfortunately, they denied her pension, her disability pension, and also with that, her regular pension. She was a soldier. They have documentation of that. But she did not receive the pension either way. So not even with her medical disability pension or her regular pension as a soldier.
And you dropped a bombshell on us because that wasn't the only woman that happened to.
Right. So as I was stating before, even Harriet Tubman did not receive her military pension, as she was growing older and actually applied for it as well. Um, the statement that was given for Harriet Tubman was that she was not a member of
Enlisted.
the military
Hmm.
service, even though she spied for them. Actually was a cook, nurse, all these things to help the Union Army. Um, they denied her as well a pension too, with that. So, it just didn't happen to Cathay. It also happened to Harriet Tubman as well.
Mhm.
Do you
Which
think it happened to those other 4,998 women as well? That once they found out that they weren't getting their pension, like the lady that you talked about, did she receive her pension?
Actually, it was different with her because she never seemed to apply for it. And once she was out of the military service, 'cause she actually went back and forth, so she had alias all over the place as male and female, with her, and
Mm.
then I guess when she found the perfect situation, she stuck with being a female, and pretty much we have not seen any information about her as of yet. And that's what I always tell people. As of yet, I haven't seen any more information, especially about Kathy and the others as well. It may come
Mm.
up later, but as of yet, we have not.
Wow.
and what about her non-military life? Did she ever marry? Did she ever have children?
Well, what we did find out is that she did get married. Actually, she got married to someone while she was in. Um, let's see here. I believe she got married while she was in Pueblo, Colorado. Is where she actually
Hmm.
got married to a gentleman. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. Um, he actually stole her money and her horses, a team of her horses, and she had him arrested. So that's actually happened with that. Then what she decided to do was leave Pueblo and actually went to Trinidad, Colorado, when she made her life as a seamstress. So that's actually what we have with that. And then while she was there for a time, her story became public. And they actually said a reporter from the St. Louis Herald heard rumors about her and actually interviewed her about her military service and published it in the St. Louis Daily Times in 1876, January the 2nd. So they actually have her interview um, out there probably now on microfiche or something of the sort, that you can actually see that interview.
Wow. Wow. You're just, I knew this was gonna do this to me. So I just want to apologize in advance
No problem.
because I'm just so blown and just overwhelmed. I really, really love this woman. And I think one of the things that I heard about her with her when I heard about her with her husband is that when she found him and then got him locked up.
Oh yeah, well they said yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, he stole her money, and I know that I would just tell people it's like still, like stealing your car. I mean, these were a team of horses. Um, so horses were, horses was wealth. So he,
Hmm.
a team of horses, and the money. Yeah. So and she seemed like the kind of person wasn't gonna let that go.
Yeah,
So
and she didn't let it go.
no.
Um, so what were your thoughts as a researcher of her and everything? How did you react? Because I know I flipped out
Hmm.
when she said in the movie The Harder They Fall,
Hmm.
when Cuffy said, "Well, my name I'm Cuffy, but my mother named me Cathay Williams." I thought I would die
Right.
when
Right.
when she said that. How did you feel? Because they were definitely talking about the fact that, yeah, these people may not have met up during that
Right.
time, but they all existed.
Yes.
How did you feel about that?
Well, well, I'm torn by it, and I tell people it's because I'm a historian. It's like, wait a minute, that didn't
Yes.
happen. But on the other hand, it's like, well, the name is out there. You see what I'm saying? So if someone sees the film and be like, well, wait a minute, who was that person? Let me
Hmm.
let me let me go and research and Google it and find something out. That's a plus because then they could say, well, did you know? Like you just said, hey, I was watching this film. Do you know that was a real person? Did you know? I mean, and that's the thing that I like is because okay, they at least get the wheels turning. That people can say, well, let me look up all these people in this film.
Yes.
Let me
Yes.
actually see what they did. Now you're right. It is, it is fictional. They may have never intertwined with each other, but they were there and they were out there. And at least that would get some folks to say, let me find out about their story. Now,
Right.
fortunately, with Cathay Williams, her story is short because we don't have everything. You know, um, there is, memorials to her. They actually have one down in Leavenworth, Texas. They have a bust of her. They got one actually in Florida about her. So you see her in a different life because now you're seeing, hey, they who is this person? And that's a good thing. And I do enjoy that because at least now people can say, well, I heard about that woman or I saw that in the movie and I'm going to go find out about her. And
That's
actually all
awesome.
of them.
Mhm.
That's
But
awesome.
again, as always, bearing in mind, movies take creative liberties.
Yes, they
And
do.
it will take and it will take creative liberties when there's an information vacuum.
Mhm.
And they certainly did with her character, which leads me to something that one of our viewers is kind of asking. So, in terms of researching her life, you've
Mhm.
mentioned pension records, military service records, and a newspaper interview.
Yeah,
Were there
newspaper.
other sources of information that you were able to pull from?
I pulled from actually those three that we were talking about, and they do have on site, and actually the National Park Service has a page about her as well, that talks about her, um, and her life and so forth. Because, like I said, you do have documentation of at least some pieces of her life. Like I said, you have it. She was an enslaved person. We have that. You know that she actually was General Sheridan, so we have that. And then we also have, you know, where she was as a Buffalo Soldier. The other stuff is what we don't have, and that's the thing. Like we don't know roughly when she passed away. We have an estimate. We figure this is what happened, but we don't know. Also, we don't know where she's buried. We don't know that. Um, so, I mean, you have those kind of things that some of the pieces just, aren't going. Did she
Mhm.
remarried? We don't know. Kind of situation. It just goes with those major points of her asking for her pension, her disability pension, is where, boom, here she comes back up on the radar, as you like
Mhm.
might want to say.
So
So did
presumably the names of her parents are known. So that knowing the names of her parents, you can look at well, not her mother, but in terms of her father, census records, because he was a free, he was free.
He was free, yeah.
If we know the name of her enslaver, then we can find out more about her that way through in
Hmm.
her mother, through whatever records still survive from
Right.
her enslaver.
And there's one thing that I always tell folks when you're dealing with looking up for enslaved people. Um, Usually, when someone is doing their property, their estimates, and so forth, they will come up. And that is actually how you would say, oh, this is because unfortunately they were considered property. And when people are listing their assets, the enslaved person is actually put up there as part of their assets. And that's actually how, you know, we can find these information if you're looking for ancestors. It's like, okay, this is how we find out because they're listed as their assets.
so when because another thing that I was looking at, they said that they knew who her mother was and actually gave a good history of her life before.
Hmm.
Do you have that information as well?
I don't have the information mostly of her of what was actually going on in the Johnson plantation. Um, I do know it was the plantation. I know where it was at. I have the information of the enslaver, but what I actually focus on is because once the Union came in, they all was considered contraband, and with that is that was one way that the United States Army could say we're taking away these people from the enslavers.
Okay.
It's because it's like you no longer can use these folks. And then with that, the person is deemed contraband, and then therefore actually given their freedom if they, choose to, move away or join the military, which a lot of them just did that. They just joined the military and then traveled with the Union Army.
Okay. So we have a question from D. Turner. She said, what skills were noted on her discharge papers and what does her genealogical tree look like? I think we kind of covered that last question, but the
Um,
first.
well, her discharge papers just said that she was just being discharged um, for being actually for being a woman. And let's see here. Um, yeah, it just says when she got discharged, and actually they said she was enlisted as a cook. Um, that was actually what they had it for. Um, and from what I can gather to it, they says see fourth habits. And even it's kind of funny because even as they're writing the discharge, they still consider her as a he in her discharge papers. Um, but her discharge was saying that Army for actually they had it as a disability discharge certificate. So if you want to say that they considered her being a woman a disability, that's actually what is
Mm-hmm.
stated on the on her discharge papers.
Yeah. I was reading one of the pension papers and they were saying, I don't know. Basically, they just said, I don't know what to do with this. We were told
Now,
that it was in the board review.
right, and see that's right. So when her so the only and this is true. If she was dishonorable discharge, she couldn't go for it because she was dishonorable discharge. She was just discharged honorably, and that's why when she went for her pension, you know that was just a conundrum for them because they're like, well, you know, what are we supposed to do? Because she's a woman, she shouldn't have even been there, and we're going to put it up for review and let someone else decide it, and that's what they decided.
Yeah. Yeah. That I was like, wow, they didn't even know to actually write that on the pension note. Like it literally said, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
And
I
this is
yeah,
going to be
it's going to be pushed up
she's just
further.
amazing. Yeah, she's just amazing. She was just a conundrum from the very beginning for them. They didn't know how to handle it. They knew she was a great person. They knew what she was doing was well. She worked with the Buffalo Soldiers. I mean, what more can you say? Because that was a very recognized group.
Yes,
So
yes, it
with
was.
yeah, so with that being said, I think with the because going back to the question that I asked you, did she see combat? More than likely she did because
More,
she
yeah.
was with that group.
She was. I mean, and that's the thing. She was a soldier, and she was in the Western frontier. Um, So yeah, so I would definitely say as a soldier in the buff in as a color troop in the Buffalo Soldiers troop, the 39th, she probably saw some action.
Mhm.
Um, Now sometimes soldiering can have this long, dry, non-eventful events, but she was out there. And
Okay.
even and another thing, even if she didn't see any action, it doesn't change anything.
It
She
sure
was still a
doesn't.
soldier. She still was
Hmm.
enlisted.
Mhm.
She did her duties until they found out, you know, quote unquote, that she was a female, and they had to, get her out.
Right.
Well, I've got a two-part question,
Hmm.
and I'm going to summarize something that one of our viewers has asked.
Hmm.
So I know that you've specifically focused on researching Kathy, if you happen to if you happen to see pension requests from other women who served, um, but only if, did they get pensions? Did they not get pensions?
Well, the only other person I know is like I was talking about was Harriet Tubman. That was actually requesting a pension for service. I have not come across any others at this time. So I would unfortunately would have to leave that up because it's like I said, as of what I have researched so far, I have not. Each woman was denied their pension. And with Harriet Tubman, I mean, she was up in age at that time, so she was getting money from doing talks with the suffragettes and other folks that was with her and knew of her. So that's the best I can say with that one.
So I want to ask this. You also do this as interpretation.
Yes.
How does that make you feel? Because, and I'm asking this question because I'm very connected to the ancestors. Do you feel like you pull her in when you do it?
Actually, yes, I do. I was telling my family about her as I was researching, and I tell them all about all my research. Did you know? Did you hear? Hey, you know what? I tell my daughter, this is the person you're going to talk about in Black History Month, just to let you know. So I get very excited because it's like this is someone that I'm learning as I'm doing my research, and I'm willing to tell others the same thing. And I love what I do. I love telling people about these subject matters. I mean, some of them is very hard to talk about to folks, but I say, this is what this needs to come out, you know, and I just enjoy it and I take it in heart because I do like what I do and I love to tell folks this is what I found out. If it's attached to a national park site, you need to go and see the site yourself when I give these presentations because this is actually what's going on out there. And if you
Wow.
don't search for it, no one else will tell you about it. You have to go
That's
find
right.
it.
That's right.
Definitely.
So Randy Simon says, are there any known photos of her?
Now, I did find a photo, but unfortunately, no one is 100% sure it is her. They do have a photo of her, and let's see if we can. If I can. Oh, no, no, no. I don't know. Can I share it?
I can do a shared screen and
Yes.
then you can
Let's see if we
pop it
can
up.
prop it up.
Okay. No, it's not letting me do it.
Let's see here.
If you can
Let me see if
pop
I
it
can.
up, I will make this bigger.
Hmm.
Or better yet, if you can
Can
email
you
the picture
see?
to
How about that? Can y'all see that?
no.
How about that right
Oh,
there?
wait, there
Oh,
it
there
is.
we
There
go.
it is.
Okay. So this is what they believe is her. We're not quite sure. So I always tell people this is what they think it may be her, but I couldn't give you a 100% definite shot um, of that.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
this right here is actually a dedication to her, and that's actually in New Mexico. And actually, New Mexican Historic Women's Society actually put up a marker for her because she was in New Mexico, and that's actually on Route 26 at milepost 10.2. So you actually see
Mm.
that. So her name is actually getting out there. People are actually seeing it, and this one here is another one. This is actually in Florida, Fort Walton Beach. And this is a marker that they have for her out there. And they also did a statue of her um, in full uniform.
Mm.
So you do have that as well out there in Florida.
That is so awesome. Oh my God.
So they and actually this is at a veterans park. So it's a women's veteran memorial at a veterans park um, in Florida.
Wow. Well, I just want to thank you for being on the show. You've done just what I asked.
Well, thank you very much. And if you want to have me back, please, I
Oh, you on
love
my
it.
Rolodex. You can forget it, honey. You're probably on my star because like I said in the virtual room, you guys are the most underrated historians out there. And I mean, there's so much that you do, and with the interpretations that you do. Because remember, when I asked you, I
Hmm.
was like, "Are you doing it as her or no?" You
Right,
know?
you did ask me. You did ask me. You did ask me that. I was like, no, I don't. I don't do that. I don't do first person interpretation, but I will interpret the information and definitely give it out there. And to any of your audience out there, hey, if you ever want me to do a presentation for you, um, I'll definitely I'll give it to you now. Do Kenya, Kenya _ Finley, Finley at nps.gov and get in contact with me. And I do have programs that I actually have set programs for, and I can email that out there to folks, and then they say, "Hey, would you do this for me?" Um, hey, I'm willing to do it.
And I'm just going to say the sad part of this for me
Hmm.
is there wasn't even a small obituary for her when she died.
Yeah, yeah. That is true. That is true. We have nothing saying when she passed away, where she was buried, anything of that, and that's unfortunate. Um, but that happens to a lot of them. A lot of them, you just say, "Well, whatever happened to them," and we don't know. And being that she did not have any relatives or any children, there we go at that particular time when she passed. So we just don't know. Now, maybe someone has something in the attic or in the basement, tucked away in a book, that might actually have some more information. And you just got to say, well, hopefully we'll see that. We'll see that.
Because I have a feeling that this is, depending on when she died, would have been before Colorado started issuing death certificates.
Oh, I don't know. Hmm.
So
Right.
my guess would be if there was one, there would be like a church obituary or
Hmm.
something. But again, to have just done all this amazing stuff, for it to be lost to history for so long, for it to be resurrected, and just that final coda, just that
Hmm.
mark of respect for service, just
Right.
a little
Right.
obituary, even if it was two or three sentences, just
Um,
nothing.
and it was weird. While I was doing the research, I didn't find that anyone actually just set up a marker for her as well. I didn't even find that because sometimes they'll just say, well, you know what, we'll just put a marker there in a cemetery, and that wasn't done as well. I haven't found
Wow.
anything saying that. Even to say that we don't know, we don't know, but here's something here. But I will tell you, through my research of many um, people, um, I have seen that they're like they just disappeared, and
Hmm.
you be saying we don't even know what they look like. We know they were there, but we don't know what they look like, and we don't know what happened after they did what we were talking about. They just kind of, just faded into the sunset, if you will.
Well,
Right.
we are actually at the end of the show, so
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for
Yes.
having
Thank
me.
you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And guys, we're on hiatus for April, but we are trying to plan something for you guys, a special. So just keep on the lookout, and we will be back in May.
We will indeed. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
this hour with us.
I'm Danya.
I'm Brian.
Kenya, you can stay on if you want, and you
Okay, then
guys
no problem.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you,
Bye
Bye.
folks.
bye.
Bye.